Of course, we're going with our traditional 20
Delay.
delay here. So, but what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another stream today. I'm very happy to have Eric from Linc. You are Linc's marketing manager, correct?
Yep, jack of all trades, do marketing mostly for Linc, but
Of course, we're
dip
going with
into
that.
other stuff too. But yeah, I guess you could say that.
Cool. So I will let you do a brief or whatever kind of introduction that you would like. If you want to do an introduction,
Sure.
you can introduce yourself, and then we will get started.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I'm working at Linc. I do marketing. Um, for those who don't know Linc, it's a language learning application. And how I got there, well, I was in Japan for a few years. And after I left my job in Japan, while living in Japan, I came across an opening at Linc. And Linc is headquartered in my hometown of Vancouver. Got the job, flew back to Vancouver, and have worked here ever since. And it's been almost 2 years. So, summer of 2018 is when I joined the company. And it's been fun.
Whoa.
And I've been, well, I guess in terms of language learning, I never studied Japanese when I was in Japan, actually. I was doing a lot of English work. I was marketing at a startup globally in English. But when I came back to Vancouver, I considered learning Japanese, and I have been actually studying seriously, I guess, for about a year and a bit, and plan to continue to study and one day get fluent in Japanese, which is a
Yeah.
goal of mine.
That's crazy that you said of 2018 because I feel like I've known you longer than 2 years, but I guess not.
Yeah, it feels longer. It does feel longer, but time goes by fast. No, but 2018 June, I believe, or July, one of those 2 months.
Yeah, fair enough. So you said that you lived in Japan for a little while, but you didn't learn Japanese there. When so like let's back up to that. What got you to Japan? Like what got you interested in Japan? Why did you go to Japan? Like what was kind of the setup to that?
Oh, sorry, there's a phone, but anyways, I'll talk over the phone. Someone will pick it up. Um, you can hear me all right, right, with the phone going off?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what got me into Japan? I went to Japan first in 2012.
Hmm.
Um, I went again in 2013. So I went on 2 trips to Japan. And the reason I went to Japan, I can't really say there was a really passionate about Japanese culture. I just went there. One of my friends I went to high school with is Japanese, and he lives in Japan. Um, so yeah, I mean, I went to Asia prior, but I didn't go to Japan.
Hmm.
I went to all kinds of countries like Southeast Asia and Hong Kong and whatnot. But a couple years later, I decided to visit my friend in Japan, and I really enjoyed it. Went back again, and then I moved there in 2015. So there's no reason actually to get me to Japan. It's just something I wanted to do, and I did it.
Yeah, you just kind of happened upon it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, I know a lot of people. It's funny. A lot of people have this idea of wanting to move to Japan, work there, live there, whatnot. That came about probably a couple months before I decided to move to Japan. I just said, why not? And I just went for it, not really expecting much, and just seeing what was out there.
Yeah. Nice. We already got a question on the side. And we'll go ahead and just jump into some of this stuff as well.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for people who want to make the most out of a free Link account? I don't have the money to purchase a subscription. So do you have any? I mean, like Link, and Eric can tell you better than I do. But Link, you can. The only thing that you can't do really with Link is make the like actual links, like the like have the words. But everything else you can really access on the website.
I believe importing is limited to a few imports as well. But if you want to make out the most out of free Link, you can by doing lots of listening. Listening is a big part of language learning. You can listen to all the mini stories, links, content that's been created. Um, as you probably know, there's mini stories, there's eating out, there's who is she. These are all little stories basically for beginners, and they come with natural audio, recorded audio. I would recommend you can listening to that, getting used to the language, and going through. I mean, depending on which language you go through, if it's Japanese, you have 60 mini stories, which are 3 to 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So that's a lot of listening practice, and you can also read the text. You won't be able to make infinite links, but you can still read the text. In the lesson. So you can do, I know a lot of people do harp on Linc for it being limited in free version, but you can still migrate your way around and get a bit of a taste, I would say, of Linc's features. Importing is a big one, and that's one of the paid features that's paywalled. You can do, I think, a few on a free account, but other than that, you can't do more than X amount, which I think is like 3 or 4.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, if you're importing more than 3 or 4, especially because like a lot of the stuff that I import, I had imported into my account like the Miku Real Japanese and stuff like that. That actually you had recommended, and I mean, some of her listening practice videos are like 13 and 14 minutes long. So, I mean, so that's you do that, you don't need more than 3 or 4 imports, especially for a while. So.
Exactly. Yeah, you can import quite a bit, and like you said, there's a lot of content online that will give you a good feel of the language.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think personally, I know that I don't know, man. I find Linc to be worth it, which I've talked about it all the time. I think it's worth it in terms of the cost because. You take into account applications like Babbel and stuff like that, you pay per language. And Linc, you pay the monthly fee, and it's everything that is available for their service.
I mean, there's always going to be people that don't want to pay for certain apps, and that's fine. I mean, there's a lot of people like that. There's people who will pay for apps. And like you said, we believe Linc is worth the price of admission. You mentioned Babbel, which is actually more expensive. And like you said, you only get one language, I believe. Linc, you get 20, 30, 40 languages. 20 plus languages. And right off the bat, I mean, I always tell people too, like, let's say you're studying Japanese, right? The average Japanese learner is going to go out, and if they buy something for Japanese, what are they going to buy? They're probably going to buy Genki 1, Genki 2, right?
And that's $80.
Exactly. So you're paying $80 for 2 textbooks, which are half of the textbook is in English. so you get that. When you buy a Linc, for example, 1 year account, which is comes to $9.99 or less than $9 American a month, right off the bat, you have 60 mini stories in Japanese, full transcripts, full audio. That alone is like, I don't know how many Genkis in one. Then you get the other additional Linc created content. So Linc created a lot of this content. Is as if you're buying a book, but it's digital. And of course, people will always put, I guess, more value to a physical product, even though they're less efficient. But in saying that, yeah, you're right. When you compare to other products and whatnot, you're getting a lot. And the mini stories and the curated Linc content alone is hours and hours and hours of product, and you can get it for less than $9 a month.
Yeah. Also, the same person says, how many words do you think is possible to learn in a day? And that's actually, so with you learning Japanese, I guess ultimately though, because you learn a lot through reading, so you probably don't necessarily take note of, all right, I'm learning 10 words today. You're just absorbing the content.
Yeah. So, excuse me. Just 1 sec.
No, you're good.
I drank too much tea.
No, you're good.
Okay. So the question was how many words per day?
How many words do you think it's possible to learn in a day?
Oh, okay. It depends on the person. Everyone's different. You always read online. People say, "Oh, I've learned 10 words a day, 20 words a day." My honest opinion, I think if you learn 1 word a day, or 2 words a day, that's good enough.
Right.
The reason is because you're gonna forget. Like it is impossible. Like it is impossible, in my opinion, to remember everything you consume in a new language right off the bat. And the reason I say 1 or 2 words is because to remember a set of vocabulary, you need to keep seeing it, keep listening to it, and that's hundreds and hundreds of times. There are words I come across that I know in my head, that I see the kanji, I can recognize it, but I can't remember the pronunciation, and that's just because I haven't seen it enough.
Right.
Your brain, exactly what Steve Kaufman says, your brain will get used to the language. You have to learn to trust your brain, basically.
Yeah.
When you overthink in a language, things kind of get a bit fuzzy. I think also it's a little stressful to try and make a target, and if you don't meet that target, that can be a kind of a stressful or kind of a demotivator for people. Out of my friends who speak fluently in Japanese and a lot of people that I interact with, a lot of them did not care how many words they learned per day. They just went for it without any scientific method. Like, I'm going to learn like 10 words. I'm going to 10x vocabulary. I'm going to do it this way. They just did what they liked to do, didn't think of it, did it a lot, and they ended up getting fluent that way. So it's kind of you kind of have to separate your child elementary brain with how you were taught back in elementary with tests and curriculum, and kind of just let it open and in a way to be able to trust yourself and just enjoy, just have fun and stay motivated. But it does take repetition. So I would advise doing a little bit every day rather than doing a lot one day and taking a break for 4 days.
Right. That makes sense. What and this is a good question. So obviously I know you work for Linc, so I know that you're like Linc is going to be, the cream of the crop and stuff. But have you used any of the other services similar to Linc? Like with the online reading thing? I know there's one called like oh my gosh, well, that didn't go well. There's several sites like that where you can like kind of read and it'll have, where you save the words and stuff. Have you used anything like that outside of it, or do you,
yes.
what are your thoughts on those?
There's a couple that I like. They don't have the functionalities that Linc has. They're just basic readers. One that I like and recommend is a website called Japanese.io. Yeah. I haven't used that for a while, but I think it still exists. I'm sure it does. Yeah. So Japanese.io is a nice site.
I have the plugin. If you actually look on the live stream, if you look right above my chat, gray circle, it's got the JIO. Like
there you go. So you use it.
Yeah.
It's a nice smooth looking application, or I guess web app. So if you want to get a reader for Japanese, that would be one I would look into.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. I just I don't know. I always feel like I come off as like it's almost like people probably think I work for Linc or something, but I really like the program.
That's great. We're gonna be making a big update, by the way. Just I think you might have heard. So just
Linc 2.0. Yeah, man, I'm excited.
5.0 actually. 5.0, believe it or not.
5.0. Fair enough.
I believe, yeah.
I wish Linc. See, I don't have. Somebody said I wish Linc saved my settings so I don't have to turn off automatic text to speech and paging moves words to known every time. It's always saved my settings. I don't know if that's an issue. Is that a known bug or anything?
We get that sometimes. I don't believe it's a bug. If I'm not the most technical in terms of the back end of Linc, but I think if you clear your cache, the settings will reset. So you probably don't clear your cache and whatnot, so they should be saved. So that's what I would suggest. Not clearing your cache. I believe that's
Yeah, the only problem I ever had with it not saving anything was I remember, and this was like a long time ago, and this is when I cared about the idea of streaks, which I could care less about now. Couldn't care less about if we're. But it would always save my time zone as Pacific, and every time I would change it to Eastern, it wouldn't. So like if I studied at 10 o'clock, or if I studied at 5 in the day one time and then 10 the next night, it would delete that streak because not or the way that the time worked. But I don't really care about that now because I have
there are
streaks. So.
I had that. I believe I had a minor issue with times, and I talked to development. I think that should be fixed. As I mentioned before, this also goes back to the question about the settings not being saved and whatnot. We are updating Linc, so that could be something that will be addressed. I don't know exactly the ins and outs, but with Linc 5.0, there'll be a lot of improvements. If you watch the last live stream that was on Steve Kaufman's channel, where I was on and a few other Linc members, Tareen and Mark, the CEO, he shows the iOS Linc 0.5 beta, which looks way nicer in terms of reading. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually excited to see the Android and the desktop. Haven't seen them yet, but everything's going to look a lot less cluttered, updated, smoother, and hopefully better for everyone to try out. And we're going to be releasing that within the next couple months. We'll see.
I'm excited for it, man. And just a random thing, if you need any outside beta testers, I know a dude that would do it. So
for sure, yeah, we will be looking for beta testers.
Cool.
So just
holler me.
Remind me about that.
Let's see. What do you consider is your Japanese level right now? That's a good. I know that you also, for those of you, Eric releases videos occasionally on Linc's YouTube channel, which I have linked below, and his Twitter and everything is linked below as well. But on Linc's YouTube channel, he does make update videos in his Japanese. If you want to, that way you can like keep track with them from here on out and stuff as well. But what would you say your Japanese level is? I don't really know how you would answer that. I mean, I know a lot of people are looking for JLPT levels. That's how they rate it. But just what would you say your general level is, just as a not even JLPT test, but what it like maybe comprehension rate and stuff like that.
Okay. So that's a good question. It's always hard to answer that question, and I don't like answering that question because if I were to say after, let's say, you shouldn't be saying I've studied Japanese for a year. You're better off actually talking in terms of hours, because you could study, one person could study 50 hours in a year, another person could study 1,000 hours in a year.
Right.
So rewinding, going back, let's say I'm at 1,200 hours. Mm-hmm. It's an average of 2.5 hours per day for a year and a bit. So 1,200 hours of studying Japanese, and everyone learns differently. This is my first language I've ever learned. It happens to be, according to a lot of reports, the hardest for English learners. So as someone who works full-time, studies Japanese part-time, first language I've learned, 1,200 hours. I would say I made up a level. I call it the izakaya level, which is, the Japanese bar, places you go eat and drink, restaurants. And basically that means I can have conversations with my friends. I have conversations with my tutors every day or so. And we talk about everyday life, like everyday things. I'll read a news article and I'll talk about that. So in terms of communication, I think it's okay. Mm-hmm. My comprehension, because I read more than I speak, is higher. So I can read NHK Easy News, if that's any indication of what my level is, pretty much without much difficulty. I read a couple other blogs. Listening is good too. I listen to a lot of podcasts, beginner podcasts, Nihon Kontepe. I watch anime like Shirokuma Cafe. So I'm quite comfortable with that. I made a lot of progress. I'm actually impressed with myself, I have to say. I went from 0 to something.
Right.
But when you're talking about dramas, Japanese dramas, it is difficult. I'm not going to lie. Japanese dramas are difficult. When I'm watching YouTube videos, not videos like Miku Sensei or Miku Real Japanese.
You're right.
But there's a lot of channels I follow. They're about street culture and hip hop and whatnot, and the people are speaking natural Japanese. That's a little hard to follow because the vocabulary, while it's not difficult, the way they speak, the structure of their sentences, it's a lot different from reading a news article. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, my level, to sum it up, I think I can speak with my friends about everyday things. And as long as they speak slowly back to me, I can understand. And I also finished reading my first manga the other week, Yotsuba To, I think it's called, the full name. And it went pretty well. But I still have a long way to go. I used to always think that Japanese would be done in X amount of years.
Right.
Doesn't happen. It never ends.
Yeah.
So everyone learns differently, but as long as you keep yourself at it, you're gonna learn.
Yeah.
So that's my long answer.
Now you mentioned obviously you work for Linc. My question is, working in languages, does that affect you sometime? Like when you get off work, or you ever like, I just dealt with it, especially dealing with Linc because you use Linc to learn. So you're ever like, I just use this all day. I really have no interest in going home and logging on and continuing. Like, is that ever like an issue for you? Or even just if you broaden that, just you work in languages, your job is in the language community. Is it ever hard to go home and then resubmerge back into that?
I would say it's easier. I would say joining Linc, it's one of the reasons I started learning Japanese. Okay. I don't think if I joined a regular, like if I joined let's say, I don't know, random marketing SaaS company, software company, there's probably a good chance I would have never picked up or started studying Japanese. So Linc, actually being surrounded by people who speak different languages, talking to Steve and kind of getting an understanding how languages work, going more into the language learning community and seeing these people learn languages on their own, how they're doing it, different methods, it kind of got me thinking, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. So that actually, I would say the opposite of what you were guessing. I probably am more motivated to learn a new language.
Interesting.
So also because I use Linc a lot, I want it to improve. So I'm using it a lot to look for things that I think could improve.
Gotcha.
So,
yeah,
that's my answer.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always thought like it would be tough sometimes. Like for example, like I was a store manager at a GameStop for 6 years, and when I got off work, like it made me hate video games because that's all I dealt with, and just people coming in and talking about stuff, like you just kind of wanted a break from it. So that's interesting to hear that it actually made you. And I guess it makes sense because I know Mark is learning Japanese as well, correct? And Steve knows Japanese, so I mean, you've got multiple people even within that office to kind of question and practice or whatever. So that's interesting.
Well, it's good. It's Linc has been a gateway for me to meet interesting Japanese people. So I always have that connection. I always want to go back to Japan, whether or not it's for living, but at least for visiting. And I consider, like, when I look at my trips to Japan, they're different. Every time I go, it's a different experience. So the first time I went to travel, meet my friends, hang out, party, go out, do whatever. The second time I went, the second phase, I call it, is moving to Japan, living and working in Japan. Then there's the third phase, and the third phase is going to Japan, being able to speak the language. So it's something to look forward to, I think.
Gotcha.
I left Japan. I mean, it's a little bit off topic, but I did leave Japan, and I left at a good time. I think if I stayed longer, I might have not learned the language, and I think that would have been while you don't need Japanese to live in Japan, it does
help
prevent you from doing a lot of things.
Gotcha. Do you think so? You kind of stayed at that phase where it was like you left wanting more versus staying too long and hating.
So like you know how you go to a friend's house or like a good friend's house, you don't want to overstay your visit. So that was like me in Japan. I had a great time. And I knew after I left the last job, I kind of was thinking, I had more time to think about why I'm in Japan, what I'm doing here. Is this something I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And after a couple weeks, I made the not a hard decision. I just made the decision, nope, I'm going to go back and maybe I'll come back one day, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
So.
Have you used other applications? Anything? In terms of learning, somebody had asked about like he said, do you think Linc is better than LingoDeer? But I know that they're kind of two completely opposite platforms. But we can branch that into. Have you used any other applications? Just even checking them out or anything? Because one thing I do, which I deleted all the apps on my phone, which I made a big video about because of just I became and by apps I mean gamification apps. But I've always thought LingoDeer is really, really good at teaching grammar in terms of breaking it down. Like if you really want like a thorough explanation. But have you used anything LingoDeer or tried any of the other things?
Just Japanese.io, if you would consider that in the same.
Gotcha.
In the same group. I checked out. I think Manabi Reader. That's another app. Similar to Japanese.io. And the only other app I actually use once in a while is HelloTalk. Completely different reasons. HelloTalk is communicating. I mean, Linc also does have a wall where you can post and someone can correct your sentences and whatnot.
Yeah.
Right now, the thing is that's not available on Linc Mobile right now. So with the HelloTalk, it is. In the future, I believe we'll shift more features to the Linc Mobile app. But HelloTalk is the only other app I have in terms of language learning apps.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. Christian Simmons, when are we expecting the Linc 2.0 or Linc update? I think you said just a couple of months over the course of the next couple of months sometime.
Yeah, Mark did say on that live stream I mentioned, hopefully within a month, the iOS version comes out. So the iOS is usually the first to get the treatment. So if you're an iOS user, you're lucky you. And then the others will follow suit. So I can't say a for sure date, but within a month or so is my best answer, and that's for the iOS.
Gotcha. I'm pumped because that's what I use is iOS. So I'm pumped about that. And Peggy Trotman says, "What habits makes a good language learner?" So we'll just branch that. Like in terms of you, like in terms of creating that habit, what did you do to create a habit? We'll branch it into that. Or what do you just in general think makes like what are some of the habits that you set in place and stuff like that?
So I was listening to a podcast, and life's all about habits. That's what one of the speakers was saying. And you need to make a habit out of something when you want to accomplish that thing. So making a habit out of part of it is Linc, but making a habit out of learning Japanese was important to my language learning progress. And I think the habit started forming a couple months in because you're really struggling in the beginning and you're uncomfortable trying to get all this new information in your head. But once you get the ball rolling, your habits start to form. What habits do I do? Or like what do I do? In the morning, I try and get an hour of studying. In the morning, I feel like I'm a lot fresher. I have some tea. I have a light snack. I'm ready to go. I go for a walk. I listen to my podcast. I might talk to a tutor in the morning, or I might do some kanji, checks. I don't know, like studying kanji in the morning. I try to get an hour in the morning. Then while I'm working through the day during lunch or so, I have a tutor that I book through Linc. And then after that, I'll do some reading. I'll try and read a couple articles a day of NHK Easy News, and then I'll try and read a chapter of manga. Like recently, I was reading Yotsubato, and then I read a chapter every night. There's 32 chapters. And the chapters are quite long, in my opinion, especially since I'm not proficient in Japanese. So overall, my habits started forming, and I started splitting up my study time. So I do an hour in the morning, maybe half an hour in the afternoon, and then top that off with a bit of NHK Easy News. And then at night, I'll read. Also, when I go for a walk, I'll have my headphones on whenever I go and take my dog from a walk. Because I'm working from home now, I have more time in the day. So usually when I'm driving home, I'll have the Japanese podcast on. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's nothing strict in terms of what I do, as long as I just do it.
Gotcha. Just getting into the habit. Yeah.
You need to get into the habit. I think building the habit building a habit, learning anything, especially with Japanese, separates the people who don't progress in the language, who eternally struggle, I think, and then it compared to the people who make progress, because the people who don't build a habit might do a bit of Japanese once a week, and in my opinion, if that's your goal, that's fine. But if you want to get to a fluent, high level, you need to make it part of your life, I guess.
Yeah.
That's how I would say.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is I think you probably know maybe better than most just in the course of talking over the past couple of years. I know that I'm in, like, even helping, like, I would be like, hey, this isn't matching up, and you'd be like, what language? And I'd be like, Romanian. And this isn't, oh, what language? Swedish or whatever. Like, and so I've always jumped around. And then this past time when I deleted everything that could be a distraction and I sat down, I'm almost 2 months into studying Japanese, which is about the longest I've really ever studied a language consecutively without ever taking a break. But it was, I got into a habit, and from where my habit was just enjoying native content, it's no longer, like, because people will be like, what's your motivation? Like, I don't really have a motivation anymore. I just enjoy what I'm doing. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but, like, it's not like a thing that's actually driving me as much as it's just become part of what I do. Like, at night after these streams, I'll go in the living room, I'll pop on YouTube, and I'll watch, Asuka channel play some Mario Maker. I'll watch Masuo Games play some Animal Crossing, and then I'll probably watch some New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it's just become part of what I do.
Great. Yeah, that's exactly what you have to do. And if you're jumping around with other languages, what's going to happen, I think, is your brain will probably get overloaded, and you'll be pushing out information that you try to learn in language X with language Y, and then language Z will come in and push out language Y. It's just like anything. If you want to be really good at something, you kind of have to focus on that one thing.
Yeah.
But saying that, you don't have to make it your sole focus. You can actually fuse it with aspects you like. So with learning Japanese, you don't have to study as in the traditional sense. You can make it fun. You can use YouTube. You can use podcasts. You can use whatever. But the important thing is doing it, making a habit out of it. And as I mentioned, if you're doing other languages, that Japanese time that you could be studying Japanese is now being used to study Romanian. That's my opinion. Yeah.
Yep. So YouTube channels, it's one thing I'm going to start doing, like, on top of doing, like, the whole mass immersion thing. Like, I'm going to start watching the video, because really and truly about the only thing I've watched from Miku Real Japanese and, like, Japanese Ammo with Misa are, like, the listening practice videos. But earlier today, because, like, I've heard yappari, like, I don't know, at least 2 million times just over the course of watching videos. And so I typed, I was just like, there's got to be somebody with a grammar explanation on this, because it can be used for, like, actually, it can be used for everything. And Miku Real Japanese had a video released 3 days ago on how to use it. But anyway, I'm going to start watching.
That's where your tweet came from, I'm guessing.
Yappari hutata. Hutota, yeah.
I saw that and I knew right away, because the funny thing is I watched that same video because I never really came across yappari until I started reading Yotsuba to. I think it's I call it Yotsuba because that's her name, but for some reason the title is Yotsuba to, I think. Anyways, they use that almost every chapter, at least once. So I was like, okay, this is something that I guess I should learn. even
Yeah.
though I might not use it. But anyways, just
Yeah.
going off topic. But yeah,
No,
just funny.
it is, man. It's everywhere because it can be used for actually, it can be used for I know or I thought or
As expected.
as expected. Like it can be used for so many different things.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, it's like did you have you watched a lot of their like grammar teaching videos and stuff like? Do you watch those regularly, or is that something you'll just kind of sparingly go to if you just like really want to just add something else to your vocabulary?
So one thing I've always been wondering, one of the big questions, and I'll be able to answer this when I hopefully speak Japanese to a decent high level of fluency, is do you really need to study grammar?
Right.
Do we need to study grammar? I'll admit, grammar study, the Miku Japanese grammar videos are helpful to me. The reason is, I think, is because I have a lot of vocabulary now. If I started that when I first was learning Japanese, it would not be helpful. If you're learning grammar when you're first starting to learn a new language, in my opinion, it's too much. You don't know anything, and now you're trying to learn rules. So you're already 2 levels deep. So it's interesting. I know people say they pick up grammar subconsciously by reading a lot, and don't get me wrong, my reading comprehension I think is quite good for the amount of time I put in. My speaking, I do make mistakes with grammar. I'm sure I know I do, and it is helpful to check with Miku Real Japanese. For example, the other day I checked how to connect verbs properly. Adverbs, how to connect them. Super simple idea. I was probably always messing them up, even though when I'm reading it's fine, but I don't really think of it because I'm always reading it. I'm just going through. But when I watched her video once, I understood it.
Right.
I didn't have to go back. I know na adjectives versus e adjectives, what they end in when you connect. It's either, for example, you're saying te or de, whatever that is. But they do help. Grammar does help, but I don't spend a lot of time studying grammar. It's one of the things I don't enjoy when it comes to language learning. Yeah.
I think that's actually a good point. I think that grammar is, I mean, it's useful. It's what the language, I mean, it's what holds the language together. But I think a lot of times, you know, when people tend to drop out of languages is because they don't realize that there's tiers of grammar, right? Like there's a big difference in, you know, okay, I just put des at the end and that's to be versus like some of these other crazy conjugations, like to represent different. So like you know, it's like I didn't realize until I think today I was looking for something and realized that in Japanese, if you want to do something, that's just a different like it's a different grammar structure. It's not you don't just say the word want, like you conjugate the verb, kind of like if you want to.
Exactly.
Like eat, like you don't want to eat. It's what is it, tabetai? Like it's
I want to eat.
Yeah,
Tabetai,
it's a verb conjugation, not a
exactly.
There's
it's
not
not
like
hoshi. Like you're not saying hoshi at the end.
right. It's not like a verb. It's not like an auxiliary verb to go with it or whatever. So
Yeah, and you'll pick that up when you read a lot too. I will mention that Linc has free grammar guides. The person who wrote the Japanese grammar guide for Linc was really thorough with what he wrote. I recommend checking that out. You can actually access it for free. Just type in Linc grammar guide on Google and you should find it. It's a link. You might actually have to log into Linc. Even if you're not paying for Linc and you're on the free version, you'll be able to access the grammar guide on the Linc web app on your desktop. In the settings where you click your little profile, click that, you'll see grammar guides. But as I said, you can probably Google and find it as well.
Yeah. Now, speaking of grammar guides, did you ever look into like I know that we just talked about how you're not a big fan of grammar and studying it and stuff, but did you ever look into like Taikim or anything like that? Or
I've been recently looking into Taikim. Kind of stopped, I guess. It's so slow and so easy, like half the grammar I've been going through. Obviously, I'm starting from the very beginning, so it's talking about like expressing like how do you say I, watashi, like very, very basic stuff. But I just wanted to start from the beginning. And I think I kind of lost my interest, but I will take a look. in my opinion, probably one of the best grammar resources is Maggie Sensei. Excellent grammar website if you're learning Japanese. She provides a ton of sentence examples, which is what you want. You don't want explanations in English.
Right.
I highly recommend Maggie Sensei. If you go through all her stuff, you're going to be a whiz at grammar, I think. And I'm guilty of not doing it because, like I said, I'd rather read NHK Easy News or watch a manga or talk to my friends. But Maggie Sensei is a good site.
Yeah. That's actually, I'll probably, the only thing really I've done grammar-wise, like I'll probably check that out because I do want to start adding little pieces because there's a lot of grammar that I do understand. Well, and by a lot, I mean like a lot to me, it's like 3, but like there's grammar structures I understand, but I also understand that there's a ton that I need to work on. And the only thing I've really done is when I've been reading on Linc, if I look at something, I'll grammar tag it. Like I'll go and I'll make a custom tag, and then I'll go back into the flashcards, like the SRS, because I don't actually use the SRS in Linc for words, but I'll just see them if I'm reading through a mini story or whatever. I'll just see them again. But I did start tagging whole sentences as a grammar with a grammar tag, and then go in and just search by grammar tag and then all the grammar explanations, so I can kind of review stuff that way.
That's a good idea. I personally don't use grammar tagging in Linc or the flashcards. I just read and listen. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I do. Yeah.
Yep. I know that that is Steve's thing. Let it wash over you, right? Let it
Yeah. He's more of just go from beginning to end without much else. Yeah.
Do you ever like while you're working with him or anything? I guess Steve probably isn't there a lot, is he?
Not he comes in once a week, but he's also traveling a lot too, depending on the time of year. But yeah, he'll come in once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Who knows?
Like I was trying to figure out if he would be, because it's like you're there working, but like I feel like it would be hard not to just occasionally be like, all right, man, I got this. I have this question about this. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it would be hard not to do that.
I ask him sometimes, but not too often. He has all the questions you have for Steve are answered on his video YouTube channel.
Right.
He has thousands of videos, so
that's true too.
Yeah.
So I know that you're talking about reading manga and stuff like that. Have you ever tried to read like any of the like light novels or anything like that, like the short books, or
no?
Are you just strictly in like the NHK News and stuff like that?
Yeah, just NHK News and whatever I can find and import into Linc. No, I haven't read any light novels yet. Okay. One day,
not yet, because that's like I always go back and forth. I'm always on this train where I'm like, I want to read, this or that or whatever, and sometimes I think, well, it's in Japanese, so it'll intrigue me just because it is in Japanese. But like I had this conversation with somebody the other day, like I don't watch the news in English, so I'm not gonna watch it in Japanese. So like I don't normally read in English in terms of like, all right, here's a random book that I found, because I'm not like a bookworm. But like if you popped Harry Potter in front of me or something, I'd probably try to read it, because that's one of the only series in English that I've read. So like I always keep going back and forth. I'm like, I really want to read light novels, right? Like I always say that. I'm like, I want to read a light novel, but like, do I really want to read a light novel, or do I think I'm to the point now where I like those little short bursts of text, something that I can read, a little blog post in 5 or 10 minutes, because that's enough to keep, like, my attention span doesn't have the ability to read a full book. Like, so that's what I've been trying to stick with. So, and that's, the thing about manga as well. It's just short little clips, and you have the little pictures, like, in order to kind of give advice. So I was just wondering about that, because I know there's a lot of people who are like, I want to read novels and stuff, and I feel like it's a great goal, but
some people are different. I know one Japanese learner who reading was his thing, and that's all he did was just read. Personally, I think that it's up to you to decide what to do. If you want to read. If you don't want to read, don't read. I do recommend, though, learning the kanji, of course. Reading will build your vocabulary, probably better than any other method, in my opinion.
Right.
Just think of it this way. people who speak really good at English and can express themselves really well are really uh, bookworms, I would say. They read a lot. They're good writers
Right.
because they read a lot. So I do think reading is important, but just read something you enjoy. If you don't want to read a light novel, then read a manga. Or if you don't want to read a manga, read news. If you don't want to read news, find a blog.
Yeah.
It's limitless pretty much with the internet.
I've thought about trying to find like a short, like a site that posts like short, like Japanese sports blogs or something, like short, like, you know, just a short little thing on basketball or whatever is going on, like, because I love sports and stuff, or even like I don't know, I might look and see if like New Japan does like a blog or something, just because I feel like that, again, that would be intriguing enough for me to really dive into.
NHK Easy News, you should check that out, and you can filter your search for sports. You'll find a lot of articles. I found I like hockey, of course, I'm Canadian. I even came across a few ice hockey articles back when the Olympics were going on in 2018, the Winter Olympics. They had, if you search NHK and you go through the dates and you look through February 2018, it's all sports.
Nice. Yeah, I'll check that out because that's something that I think would help me, because I want to, and the thing is like I'm doing all this immersion and stuff like that, and I'm trusting the process, right? I'm going through my recognition RTK and all that stuff, and I do want to do the idea of like sentence mining and stuff, but I honestly think if I just set aside even 15 minutes a day to just do pure reading, I think that will increase my vocabulary, and then I can hear the words in my immersion or whatever I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what do you think is helpful to be able to speak a language? Because reading, listening, and writing might be easy, but speaking is sometimes the hardest part. So what gets you speaking? Like, how was that to get started in that?
Lots of listening first, kind of getting used to how the language sounds, and then you have to just speak. You have to just make your mistakes and speak with other people. Friends, tutors, both are fine. The more you speak, the better you'll become at speaking. And the more you listen, the better you'll be able to understand the other person. I disagree with speaking being the hardest. I would say writing would be the hardest. I do not want to write in Japanese. I don't even know how to write my full name in Japanese, believe it or not. I have completely disregarded writing because I think that is another monumental task that I don't have time for. Right. I don't even write in English pretty much by hand. Saying that I do text message in Japanese, which I think is important, being able to read text and email. But yeah, writing I would say is the most difficult part of Japanese. Speaking, some people find speaking easier than reading. Just depends. I was thinking speaking would be easier than reading for me, but I think reading right now is easier because I just do a lot of it. But to speak better, you need to speak. That's what it comes down to.
Just practice.
Yeah, I come across people who say, oh, you know, I listened and I watched TV in English for X amount of years and I just started speaking fluently. And I always wondered, could that be possible in Japanese? If you listen and read every day, can you one day just start speaking like really well? I don't know if that's true, especially if you're an English speaker, which is a completely different language. If you're doing a European language, probably it could happen. But in Japanese, I think you still need to practice speaking. And it's always good because the culture is so different.
Yeah.
Depending how much you want to sound Japanese, you're going to need to practice speaking with other Japanese and get used to the different styles, the honorifics. If you don't care, then you don't have to practice so much.
Yeah. I have a question. So when you're in Linc and you're reading, and let's say you've imported an article and it specifically doesn't have like audio with it, like it's just a random blog post from somewhere. Obviously there's the text to speech option, but what do you do in Japanese when the word is a character or two characters and the text to speech pronounces it one way, but the wording over here in the dictionary entry has it a different way? Like, do you just look that up and try to make your own assessment from there, or like, what do you do in that regards? Because I've had that happen a couple of times where text to speech will be like kyo, but the word is like machi, or you know what I mean? Just as an example, that's probably not an actual, even remotely close to real thing, but just to give you an example.
So that happens sometimes in Japanese because just the way Japanese is.
Right.
It's a difficult language to interpret. I recommend actually in Linc, you can look up the word, obviously. You can also, when you look up the word, click view more translations and you get a list of translations. Depending how comfortable you are in Japanese, you can almost guess what the translation is.
Because of the context, right?
Yeah, exactly. Generally speaking, trust what the translations say, not the I know there's other readings, but what the translations say, those are usually put in by other people, other Linc users. And you can see the number beside each translation that tells you how many times they've been used. Sometimes the more popular ones are better, but if you check them all out, you can find something you like. I know it sounds a little bit tricky, but I use the Linc translations and I look for view more if I kind of think that it's wrong. And then of course you can use Linc's. Linc has the other dictionaries. You can use the pop-up that can look up tangerine, I bet. Tangerine. I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but it's a Japanese dictionary site that I use. But for the most part, 90+% of the time, I just use the Linc definition, translation. Yeah.
And I mean, realistically, it's worked for you because you comprehend a lot of what, you know what I mean? Like, so it's obviously...
Yeah, the more you think about it, the less time you're studying, right?
Yeah.
So.
Now, when you first started, and there's a couple, I'll get to, I know, Eric, you got like 10 more minutes left. There are 2 more questions that I'm going to get to those. But when, oh God, my brain just died. Oh, when you started, you looked up every word. Is there ever a time when you get to it and there's maybe too many words that you don't know, and so from where the context of that sentence may be lost on you, you kind of just gloss over the sentence and go for, or do you always look every single word up and try to make sure that you know that sentence? Like, will you spend extra time on that, or will you just go past it in order to just get more reading in?
I go past it and just get more reading in. I know when you start out, you don't know anything. That's why you need to start with, if you look in Linc, you have the beginner material like hellos and goodbyes and mini stories. I think getting started, which is a Linc course, is probably the easiest, which is like konnichiwa,
right,
genki desu ka, very easy stuff.
Right.
When I read NHK Easy, sometimes it's about government related occurrences, and they list a lot of prefectures and cities and whatnot in kanji. I don't care. I just click it, link it, look at it once, go next.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to read something that's very kanji, I guess, heavy, I probably will find something else because it's just too much work. If I can't get the gist of what I'm reading, then it's telling me that, stop, go and get something a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, my opinion is if you're going for content that's way past your level, it is going to be a struggle. You got to take steps to get to that level.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the difference in immersion with watching and immersion in reading. Because if I'm watching something and I don't understand it, there's still the pictures that help you, figure out, like, you can at least make the connection, right? You hear the words, you see what's happening on the screen, and you can kind of de-scramble that. But if you're reading it, if you don't know the words, I mean, that's what it is. So
that's a good point. If I was reading Yotsuba without the images, it would probably be a way different experience. But with the images, it just was so much easier to go through.
Yeah. And
kind of understand what they're talking about. Even if I didn't really understand the kanji, I could pick up. So.
Right. Yeah. Jordan's Journey says, thank you both for taking the time to come together and chat. What is your goal with Japanese? I know you talked earlier, and I think Jordan just joined, but I know you talked earlier about conversation, but do you have any like higher aspirations with Japanese? Do you plan on taking any tests, or like what is kind of your maybe your long-term end goal with Japanese?
As I mentioned earlier, I have a connection with Japan. I have lots of friends there. I've been there. I live there. And I talked about the phases of my Japanese experience. When I first went to Japan, it was purely just on a trip with a friend. The second time, phase 2, it was living in Japan. And then there's phase 3, going to Japan and speaking the language. So that's kind of my goal.
That's just
whether it's moving or living there, it's being able to speak and use what I've learned and meet my friends that don't speak English, interact with them, meet new people. That's my goal. My goal is to just be able to explore more of Japan with the language and just to see the different experience that I will have when I'm able to do that. And then there's other goals too. Like if I ever decide to move back, obviously it would help me with getting a job there, like for sure. Then I would need a bit more higher level of proficiency. And that could be, that's a goal too. Like I'd like to get to a decent level. One of the things about learning a language is you kind of have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you accept the fact that you may never get to a level where you are at in English in your native language, which some people might find discouraging, but I have Japanese friends who speak fluent English and they make mistakes, but it doesn't bother me. They are able to live, function better than most people, and they communicate clearly. Obviously, their English isn't as good as their Japanese, but they don't care, and that's fine. So to get to a level where I'm comfortable is my goal in Japanese, I guess, in the short sentence.
Okay.
I can go on for 10 more minutes. I got some time before I jet. So, do you have any questions about Japan life, working in Japan, working at Linc, living in Canada?
Yeah.
I don't know. Working at home.
Right now we got. So, do you recommend reading at the very beginning? I learned hiragana and katakana and a I presume a little kanji. However, when I try to read in Japanese, I'm not really understanding, just recognizing the symbols.
I recommend reading. Reading is a great way to learn vocabulary. Whether if you're using Linc or an app like Japanese.io, those are much more helpful than using a textbook, in my opinion, because you can instantly look up the words, and that's key. When you're looking up the words, you're actually at least understanding afterwards what you're going through. And your brain, after doing it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 times, you're going to pick it up. So you have to actually kind of know what you're consuming. If you're just going in and you're seeing a bunch of symbols, you're pronouncing them, but you don't know what you're reading, I don't think that's going to help. So get an app that can allow you to look up the words, the translations. And then so you get an understanding, like konnichiwa. If you read that, okay, konnichiwa. What is konnichiwa? You would have to find out what it means in your native language, and then you'll know, okay, that's when I use it.
Yeah.
So, get something that can look up words.
And I would definitely recommend, in terms of reading, not that I'm overly advanced in reading or Japanese, but definitely start with easier stuff, because if you go into 3 or 4 word sentences, that's cool, but Japanese, man, once you introduce a couple more, you get to 7, 8, 9 word sentences, man, it is an absolutely brutal experience. Like, until you get a little bit more comfortable. I mean, it's brutal.
It takes time,
yeah.
It takes time. I mean, what I find difficult, actually, not the long sentences now. It's when I see more than 3 or 4 kanji in a row. That's when I'm like, kind of thinking, okay, I gotta really, because I'm used to just going through my level of what I'm reading usually doesn't have much kanji in a row. Maybe 4 at max in a sentence.
Yeah.
But when I see 4 or 5, that's when it kind of gets tricky. And I don't study kanji the way people from AJAT or MIA or other language schools teach you. I just read the kanji and I learn it in context, basically. So I don't know if that's better or worse. For me, I like it.
It works for you, so that's all that matters, man. It's hard to, so like I have this thing with kanji, right, where I'm doing recognition RTK, and like, so today I was talking to a coworker of mine who he likes Japanese, and I've been trying to get him to learn Japanese for a while, and he'll off and on study it, but today he had said that we were talking about Japanese, and he said something about something about being young, and he had said something about why he was watching something, and he realized they were saying young, and I was like, I kept thinking about it, and I was like, you know, I don't think I know the word for young, but I know the kanji for it. And like I even described it to him. I was like, it's the flower, and then it's right because the way that they remember it is, oh, a young girl puts a flower over her right ear.
Oh,
Like,
really?
that's
Yeah.
and so
That,
yeah, I told him, I was like, I know this kanji, but then I looked the word up for young, which is wakai, and I know that, and knowing that kanji made remembering that, so like knowing the symbol wasn't just like looking at anything, it was just like looking at a word to English for me because I know that kanji so well. And that actually helped me remember the word.
Yeah, that helps a lot. That's a method that other people use too. Like I said, anything you can go any way you. There are more than one ways. There's more than one way to learn a new language. So
Yeah. Yep.
whatever floats your boat.
Yep. This is a good question. Are Japanese people friendly when a foreigner tries to speak their language? I'm assuming also probably specifically means in Japan. Like, well, so
yeah, no, they are. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you spoke Japanese, they'd be less frustrated with you if you asked the question.
right.
So, yeah, they're definitely more relaxed when you speak Japanese. Of course, there's people that are just not nice. They're jerks in general. But nope, if you can speak Japanese, you will make more friends. You'll be able to communicate better, and the other people talking to you will feel a bit more relaxed, I guess. Just trying to speak with you and knowing that, okay, I don't have to struggle to explain. This guy doesn't know anything.
Right.
So yeah, they're pretty nice.
Good. Good. Do you Jordan's Journey? Actually, I think I kind of know the answer to this. I'll let you take it, Eric. But it says, do you think that Linc will add the ability to see the content other users create? I would love to be able to see what others are learning with. I know copyright is a big issue there, but
So that's interesting. So most of all of Linc's content, 90% of it is user generated. We have a feed, and I know you've never seen Linc 5.0 on desktop, but it's going to be a lot easier looking for new content. If you want to know, and I totally agree with this, I would love to see what other people use to learn a language. And as you know, I invited you to my Japanese. I created a class in Linc, and it has content I've been using. Yeah, no, that's something that we're thinking of, and I think it's a great way to motivate people because people want to know, they want guidance, and people like me would be, I think, helpful for new people. Hey, why don't you try this thing? Or if you clicked on my user and you saw Eric studying this YouTube, and I know you say copyright and whatnot. I don't know, depending on the content. For example, YouTube videos, Linc doesn't actually download the YouTube videos; they just share the link.
right.
So the YouTuber is getting the views, they're getting the subscribers, they're getting promoted. Like Linc actually promotes YouTubers,
right.
which is something we want to push. It does import the closed captioning, but that's just closed captioning. I don't think there's much to do with that. But to answer the question, yes, we're working towards a model where you'll be able to click on a user profile and kind of see what they're looking at, kind of like their newsfeed.
Yeah.
I think that's a great question, and something that I would love for Linc to get down the road, because I think it's going to help a lot of users.
Yeah, I think adding like I know there is kind of a social function of it, but I think I'm not saying make it like a social media, but like having the social stuff more available, I think would be cool. Like seeing, because I know you can even post like statuses and stuff on Linc, right? Like, or you can post like little thing. I don't know if it's statuses, but I know you
can use the forum to post.
Yeah, so
that's what you mean.
Yeah,
and you do have a profile which you can write. Yeah, you could. Yeah. Wall. You have a wall, actually. Sorry, if that's what you mean. You have a wall.
So I think it would be cool to have like easier access to that, like in terms of.
I agree.
Like a social feed. So
Linc has a lot of things, and the Linc 5.0 is going to just make things a bit more clear. So
yeah,
Linc has the right ideas. We're now pushing forward to getting it to its next stage,
Yeah.
which I totally agree. Language learning is social. One of the reasons I'm learning a language and I'm being successful at learning is because I talk to other people learning a language, seeing what they do, sharing content. We want all these people to work together. And the individual can choose what they want. It's not a classroom. You're not getting a book handed to you and saying, here, study this. You're getting multiple roads that you can drive on and choose. Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be super, super cool. Seabolt, when the new version of Linc, you should do. Oh yeah, for sure. No, when the new version comes out, I mean, I will be live streaming Linc before the new version comes out, so that's not a problem. So, if there's any other questions for Eric regarding anything Linc related, not Linc related, whatever, let me know. I know there's about a 20-second delay because we'll start wrapping up because I know Eric, it's 65 minutes, and I don't want to hold you too long. Let you get to your Japanese and stuff like that. I know one common question, we can touch on this real quick, and then if there's any other questions, we'll get to those. I always have a question usually in my live streams. I didn't today, but I always have questions of what is the best way to use a tutor. And so you don't have to give it an elongated answer if you don't want to, but how do you use tutors when you get them? Is it more so for literally just hearing the language and practicing the communication, or do you have them teach you stuff? What do you think the best way to utilize a tutor is in language learning?
So the best way, in my opinion, is if you're a beginner and you're lacking certain vocabulary, go into the lesson with a topic. So read a short story and talk about that. That's what I would say. Have an idea. If you can't think of things off the top of your head, it's going to be a little difficult.
Yeah.
And sometimes tutors, especially Japanese, as you probably know, they're, I don't want to generalize, but sometimes they're a little bit more quiet, withheld. So they're not going to push the conversation. So go in there with a bit of an idea of what you want to talk about. I usually read an article on NHK Easy News, and I talk about that. Secondly, with Linc tutors, which is something we push and we have as a feature, tutors, in order for them to get the payment, they actually have to write you a report. So when I talk to my tutors on Linc, they write their report, which is 100% in Japanese. I import that report into my Linc account and I go through it because that is something I am talking about that I want to obviously learn in my conversation. And I have a really great tutor. I have a lot of great tutors, and one of them, if you go on Linc, search for Akito, his reports are extremely well written. He goes over the top. Maybe saying this will get him more tutors. I don't know how busy he is, but he's only available in the morning, so if you're not a morning person, it won't work. But he gives me, we talk for half an hour, and he gives me a full page of reports, 100% in Japanese. He explains everything in Japanese, gives me example sentences. That's how you should use a tutor. Talk about what you are interested in, have a plan, what you want to talk about, get a report.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. And then the last question that I have is Nihon Kon Taipei.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about that before, which I could easily find this, but I figured I'm just going to ask you real quick.
Sure.
Do they have, like, I know because they have like a beginner Japanese podcast as well. Do they have transcripts with their stuff?
No, that's what he gets at. He mentions that in his podcast. He always gets asked about transcripts, and he says he doesn't want to make them.
Gotcha.
You can find the beginner YouTube videos, and you can use the YouTube auto-generated transcripts. Take them with a grain of salt. So obviously, they're not going to be 100% perfect.
Right.
They're still pretty good. I mean, if you're studying English and you're using YouTube auto-generated English, it's really good. Japanese, a little bit more hit or miss, depending how fast they speak. But give it a try, or import a Nihon Contempe for Beginner YouTube video and check out the transcripts there. Let me guess. So the best way to get transcripts now are YouTube videos. I don't know if you looked into the group I invited you in the link, the one I created. Sayuri saying, check out her that course, and I recommend everyone check out Sayuri saying. That's her channel. She does easy conversation, and she writes the transcripts in the closed captioning, which you can import.
Nice. Just like Miku,
super helpful.
Just like Miku does, where she does
exactly
translations. That's what always. That's what always.
Couple other YouTubers do it too in Japanese.
Yeah.
Tokyo Veg Life talks about health and wellness. Hers is a little bit more advanced. And who else does it? Miku does it. Sayuri does it. And then you'll find the odd channel that has a few subtitles. There's music channels, which are great. Vogue Japan has a couple manually input transcripts. So
cool.
It's got to keep searching.
Nice.
Yeah, I recommend those for sure.
Cool. All right. Last thing. This is the last question, and I know that this is addressed a lot, and I don't know if maybe Linc 5.0 will have an answer for this, but there's always kind of an up and down. Does the Linc importer allow audio from Netflix yet? I know that's kind of always up and down with the importing of audio. Is there any indication on that, or is it?
That's a good question. We've never been able to import audio from Netflix. I don't know if we ever will be. Just the way Netflix is built, the security behind their content. Obviously, you pay for the Netflix account, but you can't take the audio. So I don't think that's. I don't want to say for sure not going to happen. I just haven't heard any development on bringing in the audio. I know when we first developed the Netflix import functionality, there was no audio. We tried looking into getting it. There was no way to get it. I searched the internet to find other applications. What can import Netflix audio? I don't remember seeing anything free or anything easy. So I think it's quite difficult to get Netflix audio, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. One of those things.
Cool.
There's YouTube. YouTube has how many videos, right? So.
Yep. Tons, man. Tons. So, well, Eric, man, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining. And I have Eric's information in the description. You can check out. I have his Twitter channel down there, and then the link to the
Twitter, yeah, and they got the Linc YouTube channel. So I think that's good.
So you guys can check that out. And yeah, thank you all for watching. Thanks everybody for participating. Eric, like I said, thank you for your time.
Yeah, great.
And guys, I will be back Thursday night for another stream, and I hope to see you guys there. So thank you all for watching. I'm totally not stalling, so I can get into the back end of my YouTube and hit end stream. And I will see you guys. I will see you guys in the next stream. So see you all later.
Awesome.